I'm Robin Clevett, welcome to the channel. So I'm here with James Hardie. They've kindly given me access to look at the Hardie VL Plank and try it for myself. I've been trained, I've listened, I've learned, and I've studied the system. However, compared to some of the products I've used in the past, this one is a walk in the park. So I have a rig here, which is a typical framework, which is what you might see to attach the product to. It could be timber framed, it could indeed be blockwork with battens attached. And we're going to be basically getting a cutting list together, cutting some of the product, fixing it through and looking at some typical junctions. For example, an external corner, a window reveal, you know, going around a complete window and talking about internal corners. Now the Hardie VL Plank is perfect for horizontal or vertical applications. We're mainly looking here at the horizontal applications, but I'll talk a little bit about the vertical applications as we go on. So what are the tools that we're going to need whilst using Hardie VL Plank? Well, of course, you're going to need to cut it, and a circular saw is absolutely perfect. The only difference being that we have a Hardie blade, which is specifically designed to cut Hardie VL Plank. It's got fewer teeth, it produces less dust, and it's been developed, as I say, to cut this product and last. So the saw we're using is connected to a M-class dust extractor. Even important if you're working outside, just to control the dust in the atmosphere as well. So there are two main ways of fixing Hardie VL Plank. So we've got a Hardie plank screw. This is a stainless steel screw. It's a really innovative screw and it has a Torx 15 head. It's a very low profile screw, okay? So it's like a wafer head and it holds the boards back. It's not countersink, so it doesn't penetrate and push into the board. And it's absolutely perfect for this application. There's also another system. It's by Paslode. It's the IM45. It's a stainless steel ring shank nail and it speeds up the process, especially if you've got masses and masses to do. The difference, the main difference being that you can fix with the Hardie plank screw, you can fix at 600 millimeter centers. When you come to using the IM45, your battening needs to be at 400 centers, and that's the basic main difference. It's also really important to consider health and safety whilst using Hardie VL Plank. Obviously a mask, eye protection, ear defenders and gloves. One of the most important things about any facade cladding, whether it's timber or indeed Hardie VL Plank, is a ventilated space. Now this is just a must. It can't be avoided. It's got to be done. As I say, for timber or any other cladding, you need to be able to ventilate this space behind, and it needs to be a through ventilation. So Hardie do a fantastic ventilation profile in 3 sizes. It will suit a 25, a 38 and a 50mm batten for instances where you need to use a different size ventilation space. So this is the actual profile. It's absolutely brilliant. You just pin that on and then your material will come down and stop into it. It avoids the need for a batten all the way along the bottom, which is going to basically block that airspace. And a lot of problems can arise from not having correct ventilation. Now, all of your battens need to be up by 10 millimeters. When we actually put the starter profile on, that will go in line or flush with the bottom of this. But that isn't the finished level of the cladding. So what the cladding will do, it will slot in and the face will hang down exactly 10 millimeters, which means that when you set up your corner profile, your internal corner profile, they will need to come down by 10 millimeters. Now on this example, we're using the 2-part external corner, which we'll cut afterwards to size. But if you're using the corner profile, it's at this point where you need to make sure that when your starter profile is fixed, just like on this side, take an off-cut of cladding, slot it in, and then take your measurement from there all the way through to where the cladding will finish. Basically, I'll make a quick cutting list just like normal and I'll get them cut. Now the corner that I'm going to use on this corner means that I can keep back with my boards. The board edges are also going to be covered as well. So therefore I can use the board end as it comes straight out of the pack, and I can measure from there and cut my good end on this corner, which will butt into this internal section here which we will attach first. So this end here is going to be a finished end, which is going to go against that. Now what Hardie recommend is a 1mm gap there. And incidentally, what we're also going to be doing is all of our cut ends, we're going to reseal. It's a very quick job, and Hardie do an edge seal paint or an edge sealer, which we simply put on. It takes a couple of seconds and it goes off really quickly. Here is an edge that we've done. We simply use a sponge for it and it runs over the top. It doesn't bleed onto the face. If you're using a paintbrush, it's a little bit more tricky. So the sponge, and it doesn't have to be anything special, it can just be a sponge you use in the kitchen to coat those ends up. And that of course completely reseals it, just like the front finish face. Now with Hardie VL Plank, it's super important that you make sure that you get your setting out right. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I mean, check all of the building that you're doing. Check where you're starting from. Put a laser around and make sure that you find the point which is going to be, in some cases, the lowest point. For example, if you start with the trim at the highest point and level it through, you may see some of the structure underneath if it's not level. We all hope that the trade before us has put things up level, but this is building, guys. So you start off by putting the datum all the way around. Now what I would be inclined to do would be go all the way around the structure and get the starter trim on. I'd use a laser, I'd use really good spirit levels and straight edges to make sure that we've got it all absolutely spot on. So therefore, when we start cutting and fixing the Hardie VL Plank back against our batten structure, we haven't got to worry, because this product is designed to go together completely. There's no, so you can't creep it up and down, it just goes together completely. So it's really important that you get it straight. Another little thing about the battening or the framework as well, it's really important that that's kind of straight too. So if you're going on top of block work, sometimes check that block work. And in some cases you may need to shim out your battens, because sometimes block work isn't perfect. Sometimes you need to knock off the cement snots as well and get them out of the way. And I think all of this preparation is going to just make sure that the installation is an absolute breeze, because they're the things that trip you up. It's not what you're doing, is what happened before generally. So when lifting Hardie VL Plank, it's important that you hold it upright, in the upright position. And this is its most strongest, of course. So don't be tempted to carry it too flat. This is just a little tip for you. So the process, once you've cut boards and prepared them ready for fixing, will be just simply seal the ends, okay? So this is the end what I'm talking about, and we just literally want to seal this end. We don't necessarily want to bleed it onto the face. And the best way to do this, believe it or not, is with a simple kitchen sponge, quite a firm sponge. Now this is called Hardie Seal, and it's colour matched, of course, to suit the colour of the cladding that you're working with. And it's a very simple process. It dries very quickly, so you can literally seal it, go and seal the other end, and by the time you've done that, it'll be ready for fixing. So you don't have to wait for it to dry, but it is a really important part of the installation. I can't stress that enough. And it's super simple. A paint tray, kettle, straight out the can. I'm a strong believer in only use what you need to use. This is a typical type of sponge that I'm talking about. I'll put a little bit in the tray and we'll do the ends. Now I like to do a few together, it just saves time. I'm cutting everything together and I'll stack them on the benches and we'll do them and then we'll go and fit them. And the beauty of using this sponge is the fact that you've got so much control over this liquid, which is always a good thing. And that's it. It's basically just sealing the end straight back in. It takes a couple of seconds and then it's done. So another way of doing this is if you're going around the whole building and checking your datums, you could quite easily use a laser. A green laser is ideal for outside, and I would simply mark the top of your trim. So when you're actually fixing it, you can actually see it instead of trying to relate it to something underneath, because when you're only 150 millimeters off the ground, it's particularly difficult. So I like this way of actually taking my datum all the way through. And even if you don't have a laser on site, as long as you've got a really good quality stick spirit level, a 6-foot one, for example, and you reverse it all the way around the building and check your datums, you should be absolutely fine. Okay, so I've just simply got a pencil mark here. I've got some pre-drilled holes in the trim. It's always ideal to just pilot them. You can actually use a screw that will drive straight through, providing you've got a really low profile head, and the Hardie screw is absolutely perfect for that, of course, designed exactly for this purpose. It wants to finish nice and flat, so when you slide in your first board, it will pass without any problem whatsoever. You can see that there's a tiny bit of airspace. As I said, it's all designed to do that. If you use a countersink screw and you don't countersink this, it's going to hold itself off, and what you don't want to do is damage or the screw catch the slot. That's what you want. So the Hardie 2-part corner profile is absolutely brilliant because you can see how much cover you've got. Indeed, you can be as much as 50 millimeters away from your final corner and still get enough cover to get a fixing through the first section, which is where the fixings are. All the subsequent fixings are hidden, and then the cover or the actual metal section will just clip over the top. So it's absolutely brilliant. So for example, you might say, why would you want to cut them so short? When you're measuring up a building, if for example, you can get a certain number out of one of the lengths, which is 3.6 meters, by taking it back 25 mil, you could save yourself a lot of waste. And I think that's really important as you go along as well. So that's it. We're going to basically start. We've left a small margin of our boards away from the corner, because as I say, they can be slightly in and out. You can use a bad end. If you've got a bad end, for example, you've knocked it, that could be there. Providing it's sealed, it will be absolutely perfect. So what we do on the long face here, where we need a really good end to go into the internal corner profile here. So this is the internal corner. We want to have a really decent end. So I think it's all about thinking about setting out your boards on the cutting, saying, right, that's the end that's going to go in against the internal corner profile. Indeed, the ends of the boards, the ends of the manufactured boards, providing they've not been damaged and looked after, which is key, they're absolutely perfect. They're nice and square. They're actually sealed as well by the looks of things, but I would still go over with the sealer as a habit as well, and they will go into there with that 1 millimeter space. So let's take this scenario that you're doing the front of the building only and you're returning along the side of the building for 1 meter. So where you come to a dead stop, there are several different ways of finishing, of course, but the J-trim is absolutely perfect because it will mount straight onto the wall, onto the batten, and then you'll put the ends into the J-trim as well. So again, that will deal with an end which might have a tiny little chip or something like that. And so the J-trim again will come down 10 millimeters below the starter profile. It will be fixed straight the way back, nice and plumb, and then that will lock all of the ends of the boards in. So we'll do that here as well. So once you set yourselves up and you've got all your starter profiles, any trims that you need to have in prior, it's only the external corner, you don't need to worry about the 2-part external corner. Then you'll start by using your cladding, which has been cut and sealed. So the starter profile, literally accepts it. It just drops straight in, and I'll push it straight into the J track at the end, keeping it back slightly from the corner because, as I say, we've got the luxury of being able to do that. And make sure you're fully down. At this point, you could check this with a spirit level. Use the spirit level on this shoulder here. The tongue is never something to completely rely on. Always use it on the finished edge there. So let's talk a little bit about screwing and what you should and shouldn't do. So with the Hardie screw, we screw 25 millimeters down from the top edge of the tongue. And on the end of a board, we must come in at least 15 millimeters, okay? So 25 down, 15 in. Everywhere else, on every single batten, we're going to be 25 down and fix straight the way back through. And that's basically all you need to think about. So it's really important that you've got your first row into that starter profile perfectly, and then you're away, because every subsequent course is going to be a tight fit against that shoulder just there where this really innovative V-groove detail is, okay? Now the screws will self-tap, they'll self-screw in, so there's no piloting necessary. They've actually got a very small drilling end on the end as well. And as I said before, they're designed to be really sleek, but remember to screw nice and square. So we're 25 down and we're at least 15 in. The screw will drive itself through. You can just see, I'll do it slow so you can see it. And then what we're looking for is a nice parallel screw. What we don't want to do is screw like this, because you can see then it's going to increase the depth of the screw and you will experience trouble putting that lovely tongue and groove detail together. So that is a definite no-no. So you'd then go through and you'd attach all of them 25 millimeters down. Let's drill them through. Don't overfix. We have a tendency to overfix everything in the UK. Get them all through. And you're ready for your next course. So we'll gently press the internal corner profile in and we'll slide it down, and then we'll use an offcut or a slightly longer length to line it through where it needs to be. And it's a simple matter of doing that. You can try and measure it, but I often find that actually using the material is going to be the very best way of doing that. You can see that's roughly what the gap's going to look like. That's roughly what a millimeter is. You could easily use a shim of a millimeter every time, put it in, push along the course of cladding, and then you're ready to fix. So we'll get a couple of screws into that. Now this ventilation profile is perfect for just lining that up and getting the space. If you haven't got any of those small plastic shims, away you go. You can push that in and you're laughing. We've got a board here which is just laid in loose, and we'll use this one to mark. We're obviously going to be marking the back and cutting through the back as normal, and we always cut through the back because as the saw cuts up it gives us a really nice clean finish on the front. And that's the same as any kind of timber panel with a veneer, for example. We always tend to cut through from the back side to the face is absolutely perfect. So how I like to do that is basically take an offcut of the board, and I can mark where the sill is, okay? Exactly where the sill is. I can just check that by pushing the J-track in and checking that we're exactly in line with the inside of the top of the J-track. That gives me the maximum. Then I'll be taking off the 8mm there, and that will be the cut line. So we're nice and parallel through here. The sill's level, this is nice and true. So I haven't got to scribe it at all. I can literally take that back now to the saw bench and cut it. So what I'm going to do is mark this tongue, which you never see. I'm just going to hold this, I'm going to pop a pencil mark on here. That's basically the reveal there. Same on this side. We'll run that down nice and parallel, and we'll mark that. That's our cut line. So we'll be removing, of course, this down to the mark that we've actually got here. So again, we'll do all of that from the back. So we'll take that over to the saw table and we'll quickly cut that out. So we've got our marks here and here, which we're going to transfer to the back, of course. That's the reveals. That's what we're going to square down. We can square it right through the back because it's never seen. And then what we'll do is we'll take the offcut that we had with the cut line 8mm lower, and we'll line that through with the bottom of the board. And this is our cut line there. The same on this side over here. That's our cut line there. Now we are going to be cutting through the back, and we want to start and stop the saw so on the outside we don't actually overcut. So sometimes it's best to take your saw, plunge it in and mark exactly where you want to be effectively, because that is the only way of getting it accurate. Now we can use a rail for this. So as part of the DeWalt saw that we're using, obviously comes on a rail. We can lay the rail across and get that nice and neat, and then we can just follow in by eye and cut into this point here, ease out the center, and we can even use, you know, like a just to clean out that corner, just take a small craft knife and just gently shave it back. So I can line the rail edge up with the cut. It's as simple as that. Potentially we can just clamp all this together and that will hold it all nicely while we're working. And then it's, as I say, it's just a matter of just carefully taking that out there and returning those cuts in. So I won't cut these in first. I'll cut this through here first, and then that'll be absolutely perfect. So because we need to maintain a vented space all the way behind the cladding, when you meet a window, what you also need to do is to maintain the airspace there. So we've got the ventilation profile here. So here's the board, and I've slid it up towards the sill. The J profile is actually in there. It's a lovely friction fit. And what I need to do now is just ease it up until the tongue and the groove pop back behind each other, and then drop it down, and that will give us the gap that we need to maintain for the airflow. What you want to do is be a little bit careful here. Let's get it to start both sides. Once you know it's started, then you can be a little bit more with the block, and you're there. Once I'd fitted the section underneath the window, I was able to carry on up the sides, fitting against the profiles, up against the side of the window. It was really quite straightforward. Then I had to get myself over the top. Again, there's a drainage profile that the top board over the window slots down into, and it's a really neat system. So we're at the stage where we can do the corner treatment, if you like, and this is a 2-part external corner. It's particularly nice because it's got a lot of cover as well. So as I said a little bit earlier, you know, with your ends, I mean, we're nice and true and straight here, but if you've got an offcut and it will fit in a position, you can be up to about 50 millimeters away from the corner because it's got a lot of cover. Let me just show you. It's 2-part. This is the part that basically screws back against the corner. It's so simple. You literally line it up with the bottom of the boards, of course. You hold it nice and firm and you're fixing it back directly against. Now this, I'll put 3 either side. That will hold it nice and true. And then the actual flashing or the capping will just go straight over the top. It's a friction fit and it clips on around these corners. So it's particularly nice. And then it's advisable to put a colour match screw somewhere just to stop it from maybe slipping in the future. So we're going to fix this on, we're going to screw it, I'm going to pilot it, and then we're going to screw it. Now you can use any non-corrosive screw. Indeed, I'm just going to use the Hardie plank screw because I just think that, you know, I particularly like them. They've got this lovely flat top which is going to hold it flat and not push in. So that's what we'll do. We'll get one on the bottom first just to hold it. Now it's ideally, you want to make sure you're firm and flat against both sides. What I mean is, don't screw it here and then try and pull that side round. You've got a nice square true corner and you've got a nice square section. So they'll sit really nicely. Okay, so we're holding it there, pulling it up towards the bottom, making sure that we're nice and firmly pressed back. Then I'm piloting. Okay, if you've got a self-drilling screw, you could potentially go straight through with a self-drilling screw. But I'm just going to pop a pilot hole through. It's more gentlemanly. I can feel the batten beyond. Then I'm going to take a screw and pop it through. And that's all you need. It's going to hold it nice and true. So we'll repeat that process all the way through. I put 3 in here. And then the colour matched profile will simply clip over the top. So you see it's got these lovely wings here. So we would actually put it around to one side so you're already on. Again, we'll get the bottom all lined up and we'll simply ease it on all the way up. How nice is that as a finish? So Hardie VL Plank is a horizontal or vertical application. The difference being, when you're running horizontal, you use the starter profile at the bottom, and when you're running vertical, you use the window head or vertical starter profile. It has integrated drainage in the bottom of it, and you'd put that at the bottom and then you would stand all the boards in, and it looks very similar to a J-track that you would use at the end of a run. For example, if you're wrapping around the front of a building, coming to a section where it goes to face brickwork or render, you'd use the J-track, but they look exactly the same. So if you're embarking on a cladding project and you'd like to use Hardie VL Plank, then click the link in this video's description for an installer pack. It shows you the colors and it gives you a lot of information all about the product. So click the link here now.